Tonight on Another Thing About Tartan, we are so excited to welcome Sean Cairney, all the way from Sydney, Australia, to tell us his story, virtually of course. Sean is the director and editor of The Scottish Banner, a Scottish magazine providing global news for Scots all around the world, and we can't wait to hear what he gets up to with the magazine. So Sean, thank you so much for being here with me today. And it's really interesting to hear you live in Australia, but you're so immersed in the Scottish community and edit such a successful Scottish magazine. Can you tell us how you became so involved in the Scottish Banner?
Yes, I certainly can, and thank you for having me. Really is a family affair. My parents, Jim and Val Cairney, started the publication back in 1976 in Canada. We had at the time, a Scottish restaurant and pub, and we had a bulletin board which sat outside the restaurant just as people came in and the entry point. And this is, people have to try to remember about times when we didn't have the internet, we didn't have social media and all the other things. And our bulletin board was packed full of events, Highland games, Scottish dancing, pipe bands. It just became this thing that, we could actually do a newspaper, and the people are hungry for news. And back then, probably in the 70s, there was a lot of new immigration to Canada from Scotland. And it just started off as a local thing, and it kind of bloomed and went beyond Toronto, it went nationally across Canada and right around North America and now beyond. So that is how I started. I was I vaguely remember the first issue, and I do remember the first office, so where I would sometimes play.
Wow, that's so cool that you've seen it right from the very start to obviously the huge publication that it is today.
Yeah, I did obviously didn't understand it because
Yeah,
I was too busy probably playing with my cars under my mom's desk, or you know totally not grasping or have any interest in it at that young age. But
hmm
I do remember it, and I was kind of morphed into the publication from child labor. So it doesn't mean it's a terrible thing.
no. Yeah, so you obviously did you get involved from the like working in the publication from quite a young age as well then?
It was really kind of, you have to help. This is what we did. We're a family business. So
Yeah.
I went to Highland Games from a very young age. I was serving customers at like super young, and always kind of involved doing something when I could,
Mhm.
as I got older. You start getting more, responsibility. And, I would get dragged up on a stage to just carry up the haggis for a Burns night in the restaurant, all kinds of different things. And, it wasn't really, can I do this? It's like, you will do this. And this is,
Yeah, yeah,
I'm going to do it. And we're trying to all make this right and make it good. And that's how it
yeah.
went.
So can you tell our viewers what they could expect to read in an issue of the Scottish Banner?
Yeah, of course. So though obviously every issue is different, we have our core, like we have a great stable of writers. We've got writers in Scotland, Canada, Australia, US. Each issue's got current affairs. It has history. We have a really diverse, and probably the most diverse events page in the world. We list hundreds of events on our website, and they're translated into each edition that we do, from everything from Highland Games and Gaelic classes and you name it, whiskey nights. We even have which was created specifically for Scottish Banner, we have our very own Scottish crossword. And I've yet
Oh,
to find another publication that has a crossword, which is a mixture of geography, history, famous Scots, and it was developed exclusively, the ones that we use, exclusively for the Scottish Banner by someone in Scotland for us. So
gosh.
I don't know if there is such a thing in Scotland, but every time I'm there, I look for a publication with a crossword like it. So if you're a crossword fan, and we have recipes, letters page, just lots of what's going on, what has gone on in the past, and what's going on current and ahead of in the future.
It sounds very interesting. Well, obviously, I've read quite a few of them myself, having Scotland Shop having been advertising in it for so long, but it's good for the viewers to hear what's in it as well. And you also have a letters page in each issue. So, are there any stories that stand out to you as extra special that you've received over the years?
So again, if people could try to go back pre-email and things, because this has been going every month for so long. We had so many people make connections. We had long lost friends find each other. One may have moved off to the United States, and one stayed back in Scotland, or one went to Australia. We had one gentleman in Victoria and Melbourne, Australia. He asked for a recipe of a black bun. He really wanted to make it. His grandmother made it, that he could remember growing up to this black bun. Well, he was inundated with recipes, which he couldn't believe, from all over the world. But he also got quite a few people bake one for him and mail it to him. So that was, it's a real, our letters page is really owned by the readers. So it's a real sense of community and togetherness. And the other one, which I guess is the most famous part of our history, would be there was a gentleman in the US and the lady was in Australia. I'm pretty sure I have that right. Anyway, they ended up getting married. They met through the letters page. It wasn't like someone looking for a partner, but it just worked out that they developed just a lovely friendship, and they started writing, and that just developed into a marriage. And they just met each other through the letters page. So now hoping that marriage lasted a very, very long time. So I don't quite know what happened.
Wow, that is pretty incredible to meet through a magazine. That's very cool that it has such a bond between the readers like that.
Yeah, and I think there's a real common sense of, the vast majority of our readers are outside of Scotland, obviously, and they've all either left Scotland, or they're multi-generational where they now reside, but they feel the pull of Scotland, and they just have a connection. So whether you're in New York City or in Auckland or in Vancouver or Sydney, there is a common theme there that, that the love of Scotland is very strong, and the connection with fellow Scots, no matter where they are, it doesn't have to be Scotland, obviously, is also strong.
Yeah, definitely. And it's clear to see that through these stories as well.
Yes, and that is what's really kept us going. Obviously, we wouldn't still be printing today if that wasn't still a thing, and it still is a thing, which is wonderful.
So obviously the last few years have been extremely difficult for many businesses. So do you have any plans for where you see the Scottish banner progressing and developing in the next few years?
Well, look, everyone has to roll with the times. Like, I feel like sometimes ink is in my blood, and if you were to cut me open, there might be some black ink come out with the blood. But the Scottish banner started as a newspaper before, the internet was even a consideration for any business. But nobody can sit behind and not say we are where we are today. And certainly during the pandemic, it was, like you say, very tough. We lost a lot of our advertisers because we have so many events that support us. But we also gained a lot of online readers, and we gained a lot of social media followers. So that has been a great thing to us, and I can only see that growing and becoming more strong. And that will be, I'm very much a believer in keeping print going, but the digital aspect of the Scottish banner is just going to keep getting bigger and bigger.
And that'll be really exciting to see in the next few years as well. But I do agree with you that I think there's nothing better than actually sitting down and reading an actual magazine in your hands. It's just, there's nothing quite like it.
Yeah, like some people love the aspect that they can subscribe to the digital edition and they can load them up on their iPad, like if they're traveling around or what have you. Whereas others, want to have that physical thing in their hand. They want to, either curl up on the couch and just feel comfort with it. So it's an individual thing, but certainly our online readers are now obviously younger demographic, and I'm just glad that there's interest.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's really, really good. And I can also tell that you're from your accent that you're not originally from Australia. So whereabout are you from, and how did you find yourself in Sydney?
Correct. So I am a Canadian. I love Canada and grew up in Toronto, and it's one of those places. It was a great. I have such a great fond memory of growing up and my time there. However, I was a backpacker for a long, long time, and I fell in love with Australia. And when I came out here between my university and, well, finishing high school and university, I started going to some Highland Games just as a complete visitor, only because I always went to them growing up in Canada. And
Yeah.
I saw we had nothing quite like the Scottish banner here in Australia. So it was always talked about to expand the banner anyway. And I thought, what a great opportunity for me. So after my university, I did come back to Australia, and I've now been here for coming up 25 years.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I,
amazing.
I do love Canada, but I don't love it always in the winter, let me tell you. So, yeah.
No, that's very cool that that's how you ended up there. I like that story. It's good. Um, so as you mentioned earlier, you're incredibly involved in the global Scottish community. But do you have any Scottish heritage of your own? And can you tell us any interesting stories about your family tree?
Yes, so our family is all from the Glasgow area. My dad grew up in Glasgow, and where he grew up actually in an old tenement where they didn't have a toilet, and they were one of those tenements where I think everyone shared the toilet in the back, in the kind of the back of the alley. Um, it's actually turned into the Commonwealth Games Village when they had the Commonwealth Games. So it's just where the velodrome is, the Sir Chris Hoy Velodrome. Um, he and my uncle, who was really probably the family genealogist. My uncle is John Cairney, who many might remember him as probably the most famous interpreter of Robert Burns. He wrote several books on Burns, but he also played Burns in theater all over the world. Actually, he used to. He was one of those ones that dragged me up. By the way, for on a Burns night in Canada, I would get pulled up on stage at kind of 8 years old, absolutely mortified in a room of a few hundred people. So my uncle could give the toast to the haggis, and yeah, so that is kind of our home territory. And every time I'm back in Scotland, I can't not. Well, I would never not be in Glasgow. I still have family there, and that's just it's one of my favorite places to be.
And have you, obviously you have Scottish heritage, your parents are from Scotland. So have you celebrated your Scottish roots from a young age? And if so, how did you do that?
Well, I think I did, but I wasn't really out celebrating them. I think I was raised with this sense of like I say, we had a Scottish restaurant. My dad had several Scottish pubs. We always had the banner. We went to Scottish events. Our house had tartan in it, and like Scottish things. We had Scottish plates on the wall. Like Scotland was always around me. It wasn't like I was kind of thinking, oh, I want to celebrate having Scottish
Mm-hmm.
ancestry. It was just because both my parents had Scottish businesses. I think that also added another layer to how um, kind of you celebrating being Scottish without really thinking about it, if that makes
Yeah,
any sense.
yeah,
Because you're helping in the restaurant, you're helping like doing this, or like you're at the Highland Games running at the tent, and all these things are just, you're not really focused on this is what I'm out to do, but it's actually what you spent years doing without even
yeah.
thinking of it. It just became this part of the DNA, like literal DNA, obviously in your blood, but it's also part of your family's DNA and on how you kind of were professionally.
Yeah, it's just in your day-to-day life. It wasn't something you consciously thought about, really.
Yeah, and still to this day, like I said, I've been in Australia for 25 years, and some people think I'm an American, and then they ask me, what do you do? And I say I run a Scottish newspaper, and everyone's very confused. They're like, why is there an American or North American running a Scottish newspaper in Australia? And it's just, well, that's kind of the global world we live in, and isn't that a
Yeah,
fantastic thing? Why not?
exactly. No, I think it's amazing that there's, you've got different aspects of different cultures, and you can bring them together to share the Scottish heritage, and I think it's really nice.
Yeah, and it is. It's a great thing, and it just shows you like the Scottish global footprint is so massive, and
Hmm.
you can go to all kinds of places, and there's a touch of Scotland somewhere. So there's a Scot who's done something along the way somewhere, and even in the most un-Scottish places, because I've traveled all over the world, and I've been amazed what I found in the most bizarre places.
Yeah, no, definitely, I would agree with that. So obviously, you're saying that it wasn't like a conscious thought that you were celebrating your Scottish heritage, but do you feel like having these aspects of Scotland in your day to day life has shaped your worldview that you have today?
Yeah, I do, because I think when well, I've always been aware of being Scottish, but then when you're so aware of having Scottish background, I'm also aware then of all my other, like I've got Greek friends or, people of different backgrounds that then I'm interested in those as well. I love the whole Scottish scene, but I'm also, I'm really interested in Asia and all kinds of other parts of the world. So I think having that kind of connection to your individual background helps you also look at kind of a more global view. And
So the name Cairney unfortunately doesn't have their own clan, but do you know if you're connected to another clan, like the Cairney name is a sept of another clan? And
yes, yeah. So we are in Clan Leslie,
okay,
um, and I wear the Leslie modern tartan. And I was in the Clan Leslie Society here in us for the Australia, New Zealand, but unfortunately they've have closed. So that chapter is no longer
well, that's a
um,
shame.
actively running. It is a shame, and unfortunately, I'm just too busy to do it myself. I'll be like so many other people, right? So
Yeah. Oh, well, that's nice that you still had, that clan connection for some part of your life, and if you went to Highland Games in Canada, you could go and speak to the Leslies if they had a tent there, because you have that
yes,
connection.
very much. And I've met the chief, and
Oh,
yeah, no, it's nice to have that kind of extra link.
yeah,
Rather than broadly just saying you've got, your background, you've got Scottish in your blood. Well, actually, there's a bit more than that.
yeah,
Our family line follows this clan, and I think the clan groups are just so strong all over the world. So that's a great thing.
yeah. No, definitely. I think once you're part of a clan, wherever you go, if you find someone else that is also part of that clan, you instantly have this connection because you have this
Yes,
shared common
yes.
ground.
It's like
Yeah,
having an instant friend somewhere that you actually never met
yeah.
before, but you could go to their tent and suddenly, you're just mates. It's great.
Yeah, no, that is so cool. So there's a real trend just now for exploring your roots and therefore more interest in Scottish heritage. Do you see this continuing in the future?
Yeah, I do. I think it's been going for a long, long time
Mm.
anyway. But I think now, with things like the internet, the way it's just, and Scotland, well, I only know about Scotland. I don't really know, say, what some other European countries would be doing, but Scotland has done a fantastic job with their records, with through libraries, through Scotland's people. There's so much kind of available to people who really want to find out who they are or what they're, and I think everyone wants to kind of hear a bit about their story. So
Yeah,
having both digital or when people visit Scotland, they can actually go to some of these amazing. Like I've been to the Scotland's People Centre in Edinburgh, and it's an incredible place, and what they're doing there is great. And we have some really good, I think we've got one or two good stories coming up in the Scottish Banner over the next few months, exactly about finding whether your digital records or your family's digital records. So I think it's something that just keeps growing, and technology's made such a vast difference. There was a time you had to literally physically fly over and maybe troll through some records, or now there's if you're online, you can just really access some really rich resources.
Definitely. Yeah, it's a lot more accessible now than it was, even 10 years ago. It's so much more accessible now.
And there's more of an appetite for it. You've got shows like Who Do You Think You Are, and these type of things. And so it's put it into people's minds. It's a lot of people, I think I always say to people, I'm pretty sure when I hear that they start, they think they're going to, maybe it will take them a couple of months to go so far, but they start digging and digging, and suddenly it's years of your work. You can spend years. Actually, some people I know have gone back like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, and they've been able to trace. It's quite incredible.
Yeah, that is very cool. I also think that with the technology improvements, it's bringing in a younger generation. Like younger people are also becoming more interested in learning about their family tree as well, I think.
Yeah, very much. And even if your ancestor could have been a thief, or what was considered a thief back then, like, they may have nicked a piece of bread, but isn't it incredible just to sit there and go, okay, well, that's why, for instance, like a country like Australia, where all the convicts were sent, that's how we started here. Let's just say, for an example, like my bad Scottish great-great-grandfather nicked a loaf of bread, and he ended up in Sydney, and that's why I now live here, sort of thing. Like, that could be somebody's story. So
yeah, literally, yeah.
Yeah.
It is very interesting, definitely. So my colleague Emily has been taking the ScotlandShop tent on a tour of Highland Games in Canada this summer, and I know that she's found the Canadian Games really different to Scottish Highland Games. And obviously, you've said that you've visited Highland Games all over the world. So what would you say is the biggest difference between games in Australia to North America or even to Scotland?
When I came to Australia, I noticed things like straight away, that because I was so used to going to US or Canadian games, like especially in the US, they are just kind of they're bigger, right? Everything's bigger in America, and they are bigger in the United States. They've got bigger budgets, bigger bands, bigger tents, and 3-day events. Whereas, for instance, just an example, in Australia, there's a couple that are more than one day, but it's quite limited on, most don't need to be any more than one day here. We just don't have the huge crowds. And but the funny thing for me, anyway, I was thinking about it, is it's actually what's more similar than what's different. So whether you're at a Highland Games in Toronto, or in Florida in the States, or in, say, Perth in Western Australia, there is such a similarity, actually. Like, okay, they may not have the same level of entertainment, and they may not have the same kind of big bar or something like that, but really it's the same core values. It's people, there's a great sense of friendship, community. I think anyone, whether you're active in the Scottish community or not, and even not from the Scottish community, can be made very, very welcome. Great entertainment, passionate people. Especially the committees that run these type of events mainly are volunteers. It's an incredible group of people that kind of are behind these, and they're just passionate about sharing, the Scottish culture to a wider audience. Plus, you've got the pipe bands, all the practice that they do, the dancers. And that is actually quite a similar bond, and I love seeing it when I see people kind of all coming together, and there is a lot of different aspects. The dancers are kind of do their thing, and they're often earlier in the morning, and the pipe bands are obviously so popular with the crowds, as are like the heavy events. People love to see them. Big men throw big stones and big sticks, all that type of stuff. The clan members that show up and get up early and set up a tent and are there just out of their own free time to help anyone with queries. Like it's an incredible that when they all come together, it's actually a very incredible day or weekend. It's and Scotland's so lucky to have thousands of people really around the world who are acting as kind of ambassadors. It's very special.
Yeah, no, it is very cool, definitely. And you're right in that obviously the core of each games is all, they all share that, don't they? Because that's why everyone is
They
there.
do. I think you could pick up, like, Emily could come down here and she'd find it different because she'd probably find it quite hot. But she'd find it the same at the same time, and I know when I go to a games in North America or in Scotland or, I obviously do a lot in Australia and New Zealand, and, there's a sense of, I kind of already know what's about to happen. I often do up to 20 plus games a year, and I've been doing them for multiple decades. So, it's, though they're all different and every year they're different, there's also a great connection, and you may not know people when you arrive, but you often know quite a few people by the time you leave.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's very cool. So obviously you mentioned that whenever you come to Scotland, you always go to Glasgow because that's where your family are. You still have family there. But are there any other must-do things, food or people that you always have to see or do whenever you visit Scotland?
I love going to pubs, not necessarily to just have too much beer or whiskey, but I love going to pubs that have kind of impromptu trad sessions. I love, not like I love the bigger acts, which I've seen some pretty cool Scottish acts, but I like just walking into, like, say, Glasgow, a West End bar that's just got like an open night, and you've got people who are just jamming and they probably didn't know they were going to play with each other, but they just make a sound and a friendliness that comes from that. I really enjoy that. I clearly love the Highlands. It's just, there's something about mountains that I just love, and I think it's so stunningly beautiful. And I guess the history is always, something like Edinburgh's just stunning. And I always, going back to Glasgow again, but I always tell people, like, when you're in Glasgow, look up, keep looking up, because they don't always really, it might be a boots shop or something on the ground level, but if you look up, there's some great carvings or statues on some of the old buildings. And the islands are so special too. Like, to be honest, I haven't been to the islands for a little while. So, and because of COVID and a few other things happening, I haven't been to Scotland. So I'm well overdue, and watch this space.
Yeah, not too long, not too long.
Yeah, I'll let you know when I'm there.
Yeah, definitely. And finally, we ask everyone this question: what is your favorite tartan?
That's kind of asking someone, like, what's your favorite flavor of ice cream, or for me anyway, because I can't tell you the amount of times I go to an event and I see just a striking looking tartan, which, I know a lot of tartans, but I don't know every tartan, and I don't have to say, excuse me, what is that? And you get these great stories out of people. Either they have like a clown, or it could be a district tartan. But I do wear the, like I already said, the Leslie Modern, which I love because I just think it's a classic. It's got the right colors for me. Black Watch as well is a really nice tartan. One I'm probably most proud of is we developed the Scottish Banner tartan to celebrate our 40th anniversary of publication a few years back. So that is a special tartan for us, and that represents all the flags of the countries in which we serve. It's got like a thin little bit of black representing that ink that's in my blood that I talked about. And I am also, so I know I'm probably over answering, but I am also a sucker for Buchanan antique. Every time I see it, I think of autumn. I think of probably Canadian autumn, if I was to be honest, but not so much Scottish. I just love it. To me, there's a sense of home when every time I see it. I just think it's so comforting, that one. So those are kind of some of the tartans I love. But there's so many tartans that I keep getting blown away by when I go to an event and or when I see a pipe band march out and I go, God, what are they wearing? They look fantastic. Some of the bands just look so sharp and put together. It's fantastic.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think sometimes the story is what makes the tartan even more special, when you hear that story, or if someone they're so passionate about that certain tartan, it does make it even more special, I think.
Yeah, and when you think of tartans, like an outsider, a non-Scot would say, "Oh, do you have a green tartan or a red tartan?" Or, they put it down to that basic thing. But when you actually see the variety, like I don't need to tell ScotlandShop about the variety of tartans. Like you guys, you're the 500 tartan, people.
Yeah.
So it's just, there's such a kaleidoscope of amazing tartans, and some of them are just, like you say, the stories that when someone says, actually I developed this because my grandmother came from Shetland and we made our own tartan, and I've heard all these kind of great stories, and it's like, wow, good for you. And like, someone actually told me that they developed a tartan when their grandmother died, and it was a tribute to her, and I thought, isn't that amazing? Because that will be with them forever, the family.
Yeah.
So
it is a really special thing, and yeah, you're right that when you hear a story like that, it just makes it even nicer, doesn't it?
yeah, it does. And everyone looks good in tartan.
Yeah.
You could have any background, you don't have to be Scottish. I've seen some, like here in Australia, there's a chap who goes to one of the festivals. He's Aboriginal. He always wears his kilt. He looks fantastic. I've seen so many different people of different backgrounds embracing tartan, and I just think it's fantastic, and I say good on you. And tartan's also incredibly fashionable anyway. It's been used by some of the top designers, and it doesn't go out of fashion.
No, definitely not. You're always going to see it on the runways each season, I think. It's always
That's right.
Somewhere.
Yeah. And you're always going to see it at the Highland Games. That's for sure.
That's a guarantee.
That is a guarantee.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Sean. It's been really, really interesting to hear you talk about your story and about the Scottish banner and about tartans. It's been really nice to listen to. And I can't wait to see what you and the Scottish banner get up to in the next few years.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for having me, and thanks for all the support of ScotlandShop, and we greatly appreciate it.
Well, thank you.